want to introduce Fergal Monsell. Mr. Monsell is a consultant pediatric orthopedic surgeon at the Royal Hospital for Children in Bristol, England. Mr. Monsell is a specialty editor for Pediatrics in Bone and Joint Journal and has long been an advocate for mentorship and diversity for medical students. Mr. Monsell is going to speak to us today with a really wonderful titled talk, "It Ain't What You Don't Know That Gets You in Trouble." Mr. Monsell.
I've titled this, "It Ain't What You Don't Know That Gets You into Trouble," and I will come back to that. But as is customary these days, I need to make my disclosures. And for this forum, my disclosures are as follows. I'm a Caucasian, cisgender male. I'm heterosexual. I am privileged. And I was born in 1960. And all of those factors have influenced the way I interact with the world and the people who inhabit it. My worldview is informed by post-colonial Britain and post-Cold War Eurocentrics, and also a Judeo-Christian influence, but not necessarily practice. So that's who I am. And so I might ask a very important question: what credentials do I have to address you on the subject of diversity? So it ain't what you don't know that gets you into trouble. It's what you know for sure that just ain't so, is the quote. And that's by Mark Twain. And what I think it means to me is that you need to question the things you hold dear and true constantly to be able to make a fair difference in a personal and professional environment such as orthopedics. And if you just believe blindly in everything that you've ever been told, that's when you're going to get into trouble. And it's a problem of perception, because not only do I have those personality traits and influences, the year of my birth makes me a particular type of human. I'm a boomer. And now the people for whom I'm responsible professionally are from a different generation. And that's fine. We're different, we're not better, we're not worse. But if we don't understand and recognize the differences, there will be trouble for both sides of the equation. And for me, the difference the years make for me, this is when I was training, and this is the age now of the majority of people who I'm responsible for. And this is me now. And the only constant in those two photos is the amount of hair. It just happens to have changed from one individual to the other. And a magic number, there'll be all sorts of personal prejudices that are unevidenced, but what I'll try and defend for you. A magic number, the age at which you become all the things that you previously mocked, in my view, is about 40. And so when I'm teaching medical students, residents, that's who I think I am, and that's who I hope they see. But the older I get, the more I know that that's who they see. And I've got to recognize that, because you can't turn time back. And the things I think are important and the things they think are important may be different. We can agree to differ, but I mustn't impose what I think is correct onto people who I'm trying to encourage, not necessarily influence. And for me, a Damascene moment was, I was sitting in a Saturday morning trauma meeting, and I was surrounded by my junior team. They were working hard. They'd been bashed that night, but they were still working hard. And I looked around and I realized that I didn't know anyone's name in that room. And it struck me, how did I become this person who I used to despise? And it was at that point I thought, I'm going to try and make the way I interact with my trainees, my students, slightly different. I'm going to try and get to know them. There will be quotes from a number of people. And when I put this together, I realized all the quotes are from long dead white males. And so what I wanted to share with you is, if I had a top 5 people that influenced me, and it's not just because it's diversity. I wrote this list out a while ago. My wife and my mother get free entry. If I couldn't say that, there would be something wrong with my life. But people who have really influenced me from a scientific perspective are Manuela Sklodowska-Curie. And I used to be really interested in physics, and she's Marie Curie. Sophie Scholl is probably the bravest person that I have ever read about. And if you don't know her story, I would recommend that you look it up. And Malala Yousafzai, it's not what happened to her, which was terrible. It's what she did next that really impressed me. And they're people who I think, if they only could have said things that I could put into an orthopedic talk, I could replace all my statue people who you'll see now. And this is one, this is Edmund Burke. Edmund Burke was an Enlightenment philosopher. And this statue is 5 minutes from my office. And if you look at that building there, you'll understand why I'm showing you this. Because that is the same building. And this is the plinth, which some of you may have seen in the international news last year, was Edward Colston's statue, which they tore down in a Black Lives Matter event. It should have been taken down months ago, but it's gone now. But Edmund Burke, I was thinking, oh my goodness, I hope they don't turn on Edmund Burke, because he actually was probably okay. And he said nobody made a greater mistake than he, who did nothing because he could only do a little. That was of his time. To rid of the pronouns and to make it more modern, it says to me that you use the influence you have to make frequent small changes. And if you think things are too hard, or you're not prepared to make little differences, you miss a huge trick. And I've been massively influenced by this, because I know I can't compete with the previous speakers with their influence, but I can influence what's at arm's length, and I can make small changes around those people who come to me for teaching and advice. And for me, it was about empowerment. It's how do I empower our students to make the changes that they need? So you ask them, what do they want? What do you want? What do you need? And what format do you want it? And I've learned huge amounts about things I otherwise wouldn't have discovered about what the contemporary student and young trainee's mind, how it works in a way different to mine. No better, no worse, just different. But if I try and teach them the way I was taught, it will fail. And we put together a whole bunch of things. Every summer I take half a dozen students. We've taken 70 students over the last 10 years. And we produce things like this. They make them, I just open the doors for them. I provide them with the materials, and then they make the teaching materials for their peers. And that's pretty successful. So we had groups making podcasts. They had questions that they wanted to ask of people. And I just basically did the introductions, and they did the rest. And all these are available for you to listen to. And I think they are absolutely superb. And we had other groups who just made information booklets for the families of the children we treat, and they were involved in the core business of the hospital, and they, I think, benefited from it, because it showed them things that they otherwise wouldn't have seen, and therefore I hope gave them choices that they otherwise wouldn't have considered. And so the mistake that you could make by doing these small things, I think useful things, is that actually things are pretty okay. You know, they're equitable, you know, everything's going in the right direction. Things aren't the same as they were in the 50s. They're a bit better now. It's just a matter of time. And I hear these things rehearsed frequently, and I'm afraid I can't agree with them. And yeah, move along, there's nothing to see here. And I think then you don't discharge your responsibilities, because the questions you're asking are just a little bit too hard. If you look at our system about what equality and diversity means in our undergraduate population, and the reason that I am concentrating on the undergraduates is because in the blink of an eye, these are the people who will be considering orthopedic surgery as a career. And the great majority of them won't even think of it. So in our system, there's been gender parity, in fact, more female than male medical students for the last 20 years. And that's a professional generation. The people who were in medical school at the left-hand side of this slide are now consultants, if that's what the path they chose. To make it easier for you, it's it's 60-40 thereabouts, but the actual hardcore, sorry, 60-40. But if you look at how orthopedics looks in the UK, and this is based on 2020 data, about 7% of orthopaedic consultants in our system are female. And so these are the figures, and you can make of them what you will. There is a caveat that diversity is not just about gender equality, but it is just more easy to illustrate. And you can use the same arguments, I think, to consider whichever demographic is under discussion. And so this is the prospectus from the University of Bristol. This is these are the faces of the undergrads who will get 2021. And so there must be a massive difference on their day one, year one of medical school, and the day they choose their specialist training, because so many don't choose orthopaedics because of reasons which are opaque. So you have to accept that orthopaedics isn't for everyone. It's not, it's just facile to think, well, everyone will want to do it. And so if you don't do it, there must be an exclusion. Of course, it's not for everyone, but I just fail to accept that it's explainable just on demographics. Is it explainable on the basis of exclusion? And if it's exclusion, is that deliberate or subliminal? And I think that probably subliminally, people like me discourage undergraduate medical students at a very early stage from even considering it. I'll just give you some examples. The culture of orthopedics. I'm a prototype orthopedic surgeon in our system for me. That's how other people see us. You know, it's just, you know, top of the tree, with people coming, you know, at your feet. It's a really good parody slide, but that's what people think of us. Stupidity is a more dangerous enemy of the good than malice, and that's Dietrich Bonhoeffer. And I think that's right. We're pretty stupid because we don't actively challenge the stereotypes. We don't actively try and give a better account of ourselves in a professional environment, in the majority. So what's putting them off? So let's think about our two neophyte medical students turning up on day one, not having any preconceived ideas about what they want to do. And they go to the trauma meeting. And so there's the trauma meeting. That's pretty much what it looks like. And the core trainee is asked to present a history. And they're not fluent because they're nervous. It's a big, scary place, and they stutter a little bit, and they can't recite the current labs, and the patient isn't consented. And all of a sudden, the lead person turns into the Antichrist. And that's pretty, I think, you know, you will probably recognize that as an extreme. No, it's not an extreme, it's a parody, but it's a common example. And we did a lot of work, we, the royal we, our system did a lot of work about bullying and harassment. And if you look at definitions, bullying is abuse or misuse of power through means intended to undermine, humiliate, injure, or injure. And that demonstration, for me, is a prime example of what we are not supposed to be doing anymore. And our students will watch it. And I don't blame them for thinking, actually, I don't want to play. I don't want to go here. This is not the sort of thing I really wanted to choose as a career. And very early on, I fear we're putting people off for fairly simple reasons. And then you get the next patient who's an IVDU, never called anything. They're labeled by this 4-letter acronym, approximately 25, and then everyone turns into, dun, 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 yeah, no one wants to know. They turn into, you know, automatons, because that's something that doesn't interest them. And the presentation goes on, left the ward, probably to score for an IND sometime on the end of someone's list, I expect. And I get very cross when I hear this, because again, bullying and harassment is characterized as behavior that is offensive, intimidating, malicious. And I think that is what that type of presentation, it can be defined as. And so my medical students sitting there have already been lost. They're not going to come to a group of people that behave in this way. But if you ask the perpetrators in inverted commas, I think, well, it's just banter, it's just stuff. Well, that may be, but it's pernicious and it's putting a lot of people off and it's insulting. And so that's our trauma meeting this morning. I took the picture this morning and everything's going on. And from the back of the room, Adiem's going, well, you know, I'm not been included here. It's a bit of a setup and she knows she's going to be on this. But see, and that's what I see is the medical students and juniors are at the back of the room. They're not included. They're put off immediately. I'm very disappointed with this woman because whatever I've said to her, she's definitely going to be a pediatric surgeon and not an orthopedic surgeon. And I'm bitterly disappointed, but there's nothing we can do. She's a great loss to our service. She'd be a great gain to the pediatric surgery mob. So the hottest places in hell are reserved for those who maintain their neutrality in a period of moral crisis. Dante's the Inferno. And I love the quote. And what does it really mean? It means that you can't just look away. If you're uncomfortable about it, as I am, and you don't do something about it, then you take what's coming to you. And so how can I change the culture of a trauma meeting as just a metric of trying to invoke change in a small way at a very downstream level that if adopted widely and more expansively may make a little bit of a difference. So you have a trauma meeting, which is informative, collaborative, friendly and fun. Now I can't do that at the wave of magic wand, but what we have done during COVID is we've tried to do just that by making it virtual. So we just made the virtual trauma meeting for medical students. So all the nonsense that I've just described to you goes, all the Latin words and the arcane classifications that we hide behind goes. And the people who present in these meetings, I want to be able to give a common sense account of orthopedic conditions for undergraduates. And we've done 10 of them. We had them bi-weekly in the evening because that's when the students wanted them. We did them at the back end of last year. Zoom for me is nothing new. COVID has made it legitimate, but it's something I've been using teleconferencing for a while. And for me, this is absolutely, it's opened doors because now everyone is familiar with it. It was widely advertised on Facebook. I don't do Facebook, but the students did all the advertising. You can't be what you can't see. So deliberately, not deliberately, rightly, but deliberately had a diverse faculty. And it doesn't matter who the faculty is, provided it's not me, because I do not want that stereotype to be the first thing the students see. And these are very short clips because I don't want to run too far over. And they're available, and it's a medical student who introduces.
Welcome to the virtual trauma meeting. The aim is to provide a friendly environment for open case-based discussions with the help of orthopaedic trainees and consultants to build upon orthopaedic knowledge and experience for undergraduates. Please.
And so, again, I want...
So the neuro exam on her hand, thumbs up, which is testing thumb extension, which is the radial nerve.
And at the end, encouraging engagement and questions.
We hope this has been informative. If you have any questions or suggestions for further programmes, please contact us at thegrandacademy@btinternet.com.
And so series 1, we did a whole bunch of things. We asked them what they wanted to hear about. We made the programs and we put them on we edited them down and put them on YouTube so they could be a resource for our undergrads. And that's now something we're going to roll out in series 2, and we're going to try and do it in multi-centres in the UK, see if we can get a bit of inertia behind this as a project. They had formal certification. It was good for their portfolios, and I think everyone got something out of it. So what can I do? Well, I recognise I can only take small steps, but I think early engagement is extremely important. Encouragement is so undervalued, but so important. You have to kill the stereotype. What I'm trying to do is put people like me out of business. I mean, that's just the way it has to be. Other people who don't look like me have to fill these spaces. Otherwise, we've made no progress. And you have to demonstrate alternatives. Otherwise, there's no purpose to any of this. But what have I really learned over the last 35 years? That was me as a trainee, and that's me just as a nearly retired orthopaedic surgeon. What I've really learned is as follows. All you've got to do is be on time, be nice, be optimistic, and then just let it play. Thank you for your attention.
Fantastic, Fergal. Amazing. You really encouraged me to kind of say what I mean and say what I think in talks. I think you captured the spirit and essence of bringing out what was in your heart, and I think you've modeled that. How are you seeing others around you accept this way, and are you affecting change amongst those who you would potentially traditionally believe do not want to think in this way?
I am very encouraged by the buy-in from people like me, and it's just we don't know how to do it, and this is just a small idea, but it's given us a hook that we can actually use. No one's comfortable about how things are. There are some, some people you won't change. You just got to make sure that their influence is managed. But quite a lot of people actually, I say this, an awful lot of my contemporaries are very liberal-minded people. We all have our prejudices. We carry them. That's who we are. But they can see through that and understand that the status quo is not as good as we can get it by any means. So they want a way that they can influence it. And this actually, the advantage of this is because it's really simple, and it's actually quite a lot of fun, and everyone comes out of it feeling a little bit better. So you don't have to sell it very hard. And what I want to do as well is I want to extend this to, my other thing is I was in the OR this morning, and we have a medical student who was there who was terrified because no one had told her, actually, if you breathe out too hard, it's not going to affect the operation. If you move, you just to get people to relax and get them included. It's so easy. And these are easy, they're low-hanging fruits, they're easy wins. But if we don't do it, I think everyone's concentrating on the people who have already made their mind up to become orthopedic surgeons. My group that I'm most interested in are the people who never would consider it, but may make the best orthopedic surgeons in the world. So in answer to your question, there is buy-in because it's easy.
That's wonderful. On a tactical note, are the videos available to anybody on YouTube, or is it a sign up with a password?
No, I'm an information communist, and they go straight onto YouTube. They're free to view. The trouble is, we've got to edit a few. I put them out, and I had some very, very deliberately pedantic reviewers, and there's a few mistakes. So you have to give us about a week, but then they'll be available on YouTube, free to view. Anyone can have them. And
we'll give you grace as well.
Huh?
We'll give you good grace too.
About a week. But again, for me, if it's got to be easy. It's got to be accessible. It's got to be free. And it's only cracky. There's just a bunch of YouTube talks here. It's not going to change the world. It's just.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. The other panelists are on. We have about 9 minutes left. Are there any questions between the panelists? Anything inspired you to ask a question? We don't have any questions in the chat, and just wanted to give any of the panelists an opportunity to extemporaneously speak or have a question.
Just want to make a comment. I think Fergal's presentation was perfect. Fergal, it brings me joy that your trauma room is not also filled. It's good to have history, but also trauma rooms that are intimidating with a lot of paintings of a man that achieved a lot of things with hands like this. Just kidding, but it's just it was very inspiring talk. Thank you very much.
My role in the trauma meeting is a bodyguard for the young folk. That's my role now. At least I know what it is.
That's right. Any other thoughts or comments or questions? Dr. Samora, any closing thoughts then from you?
Yeah, no, I think clearly we have some of the leaders across the globe with us today. And I love Dr. Monsell's thought that it doesn't matter how big a change you can make in your small sphere, you can make a huge change. And I think that is the best take-home message of the day. And that, yes, we might not all have the influence that everyone on the panel has, but certainly in our own spheres, we can have quite a profound influence on those around us. And really just promoting this concept of inclusivity and diversity will make us a better specialty. So thank you all for what you do and for being here.
I want to thank you, Dr. Samora for helping me to navigate through the multiple time zones and planning of this. I think we make a great team. And I do want to give one more shout out to all of our panelists, Dr. Mattos, Dr. Thiart, Dr. Fu, and Mr. Monsell. Thank you all for the amazing session. This is going to go down in posterity for all to view again, and we'll view again and again. Thank you again. I'm going to say good morning, good night, good afternoon, depending upon where you are. Have a great day. Thanks, everybody.